Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia on the Community Radio Network. We also go out on Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and a whole range of other things, including blogs and a whole range of different internet paraphernalia. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone and screen Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money Academy, Wise Girls Money website, whatever the thing is. I'm sure Philippa will correct me, but Philippa's been on the show for a long time, and she's had various forms on the show. Philippa, welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, earlier this year, you would have heard a wonderful lady from Kalgoorlie who is a social counsellor who does financial counselling in Kalgoorlie. And she has come to us recently from abroad, and she settled into, of all places, Kalgoorlie in the outer west. And I'm really pleased that I've been able to connect Philippa and Queen Chillenga, and we're going to talk about that today, and also something called the Future2 Foundation. Now, rather than me gab on about it, I'd rather have Philippa gab on about it. So, Philippa, people know you from Wise Girls Money. They also know that you're a financial planner. They also know that you are a psychologist. So you've got a wide and varied background, and that's quite amazing given that you're only 21 years old. So when we consider that, you've got this world of experience and still so youthful. So tell me, how did you and Wise Girls Money come across Future2, and who are they?
Future2 Foundation is a charity supported by the financial services industry, and they give back. And one of their main tenets is financial education and financial literacy. And I came about it because a business development manager landed up in my office last year, end of 2024, and said, "Have you heard about the Future2 Foundation? They have grants." I said I knew about the foundation, but didn't know about the grants. So I applied, was nominated by Sarah as Voyager Wealth, and we won a grant to support Wise Girls Money as the financial literacy for women. So we were given a grant of money, and what I've been doing with that is working with Queen, because when you and I met at the conference a month ago, we were working out how to get the women who really need support but weren't necessarily able to afford the course money. So the point of this grant is to support women who can't afford to do the program but who would like to, and to pay for it. So that's what we did. So we've set it up between Queen and myself. We've got a number of women across 2 different sessions. One has already started. The others start next week after hours, because women and families and work. And these women are migrant women from every other country. So they're now settling into Australia, trying to understand why we do what we do here, how to get started and set up using their money. And with the support of Future2 Foundation, we can make that possible for them. Pretty exciting.
I might just say, I guess, Philippa, it's not just open to migrants, it's open to anybody in that regard. It's just that these ladies have put their hand up, and I mean, Queen is just one of these dynamic personalities. You can't help it. You can't miss her in a crowd, put it that way. She's such a dynamic personality. You'll hear her from 500 meters away. But I guess from that perspective, it's open to anybody. And I guess one of the things I wanted to do, because Dollars and Making Sense is all about financial education as well, and we've done so many shows over the last 3-4 years together collaborating, that I thought this was a really good opportunity to talk about. Now, looking at the Future2 website, it's got 181 causes supported, 1.8 million in funding, and so far awarded in 24, 116K. Now we're talking about an award now in 2025, aren't we?
Well, they were granted at the end of last year, and they're all being implemented now. The applications have closed last August for the grants to be granted for the end of 2025.
Okay.
So it's an annual grant, and people apply for it, as I did, and they're assessed And so ours was specifically designed for the psychology of women and dedicated to women's financial literacy and financial competence and education. So while there were other programs who focused on domestic violence, others who focused on providing food and support for disadvantaged women, ours was specifically for women's education in financial literacy so they become financially competent with a skill set that works for them at the end.
I guess, given your background and your qualifications, I think there's a really good parallel that I'd like to draw here. You know, when people are giving aid, for example, to third world countries, they talk about, you know, give somebody a fish they eat for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, they feed themselves. And so is that a similar kind of notion that we're talking about here?
Absolutely. Yes. Because when you teach women the skills of managing their money and how to save the money, then we're teaching them what to do with what they've got. So they learn superannuation, they learn about debt management, they learn about tax, they learn about investing and insurances, estate planning with their wills and how to take care of themselves and their family, women's health, mental health, their financial well-being. Because let's face it, a lot of the marriages breaking up these days is to do with financial stress and distress. So by teaching women these skills where they can apply it in their own life and do it, then they can teach their own kids how to do it and raise them with a much more awareness around money and how it functions in their life.
Now, you talked about quite a number of topics there, and I'm just wondering, how deep do you go? Because, I mean, you covered off at least 4 subjects there that in of themselves warrant, you know, multiple weeks of coverage. How long is this training go for? And, I mean, is there something that you do to also follow up?
Because I come from an academic background, they do survey before they start as a pre-test. That helps me understand from the psychology perspective how their money behaviours and the money personality quiz. And the modules, there are modules in a 6-week course. So it drips feed every week. In those training videos that we did, they take superannuation covers 2 weeks because, as you rightly point out, it's a lot to do. So what they're doing is learning the money jargon, the actual words around money, non-concessional contributions, concessional contributions. Then we look at good debt and bad debt. Then we look at how tax returns are done. And the reason we do that is because when you apply that knowledge in your own life, then you understand how superannuation works. And one of the best analogies I've ever heard was a retired theatre nurse, sister. She said, I never married, I never had children. She said, but I assiduously saved into my super. She said, now that I'm retired, my superannuation is the man in my life who looks after me and takes care of me. I was,
Fair enough.
Can I have that? And she said, you're welcome to it, Philippa. But that's the whole point. If women can stand on their own 2 feet, have their own finances organised, they're not going to be homeless in retirement. And here's the thing, with longevity, and we've known this for decades, women live longer than men. And now we're retired, we live until our 80s, sometimes 90s. We're longer in retirement than we're ever in the workforce. So how are we going to prepare for them if we don't teach them when they're in their 30s and 40s at the very least?
I think it's well worth mentioning to the audience that that statistic is validated. You only have to go to the ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, that would show you that the average longevity, the average age of women now in Australia is over 84 years old, whereas for men, it's not even 82 yet. And so women are outliving their partners if they have partners, but they're outliving them by at least 3 years. And one only has to visit, for example, aged care facilities or any retirement environment, and you simply see that the men are outnumbered 3, 4, sometimes even more to 1. Now, the men that are out there are probably thinking, beauty, isn't that wonderful? But the women are sitting there scratching their heads going, yeah, it probably is wonderful, but not in the way you're thinking it, fellas. But also, it has its ups and downs. And so I guess, one of the things that, we're talking about as well, when we're talking financial literacy, Philippa, you and I have talked on many, many shows that this age bracket from 45 to 65 in women also has a very startling statistic about homelessness too. Maybe explain a little bit about that as well.
It's my mission not to have women homeless in retirement. For a start, when women hit 40, they start moving across into health issues. They start also biologically going into perimenopause. They also then start going into full menopause. So in that 10-year period is one of the most physically changing aspects of their entire life. That can have huge impacts on their relationships, on their mental and physical and emotional health. And sometimes when women are caught up with that and they end up, if they go through separation and property settlements and divorce, it puts them back 10 years. And if you're sitting there as a woman and I'm saying to you, how's your fog brain going? And they know exactly what I mean. How are you going to make financial decisions that are good financial decisions when you're under that level of physical, emotional and mental stress?
And I guess when you...
financial outcome rate is not great. And so a lot of women have to start over or start a long way back already in their 40s when they've got something like 15 years left to crank it all back up again. And I don't need to tell you the cost of real estate.
Yeah, well, we certainly know that that's a burden, not just on the aged, but also on the generations coming through. I guess one of the things that I'm curious that a lot of men won't appreciate women's health issues because we don't have them. Perimenopause and menopause is something that men think they know about. But I think in essence, I watched my own wife go through she had early menopause because of cancer treatments, and watching my wife in her 40s go through mood swings, flushes, emotional, roller coasters, notwithstanding, dealing with a life-threatening disease as well. Men, and I got to tell you, I was in denial. I was probably part of the problem as well. I look in hindsight now, which is 25 years ago now in my life, but I think many men really don't appreciate that. So look, we're just about half time. You're here on Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. We are with Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money. We are talking about the Future2 Foundation and some really, really essential funding that is coming through for women in need. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to welcome back to the microphone and camera Philippa Hunt, who is with Wise Girls Money. And this week we are talking about some grants that have been provided to Philippa and that really excellent financial education program that she runs. And it's from a mob called Future2. Now, we mentioned before the break, Philippa, that we've been able to work with Queen Chillenga, and Queen has been on my show now a few times. And she was talking, for example, on one of the shows about couples fighting over money. Now, I guess, when you came to me and said, Ray, do you have any suggestions on who might, could be good candidates for this program, that we had this fund, that you'd secured funding for it. Queen Chillenga was front of mind. Easy. And when we're talking about Kalgoorlie, I actually have been to Kalgoorlie, but this was back in the 80s, and I can just remember it being the Wild West. Perth was the Wild West, but Kalgoorlie's the wild West. And so I'm curious. You've already had a couple of sessions with these ladies. What kind of profiles are we talking about? What kind of? You said that you do some assessments, pre-assessments of the people that are coming into the course. What's been your early observations?
This has happened before. Most of the women that come through immediately are women in their late 20s and early 30s.
Oh, they're young.
Yep, they're aspirational. They know that they have to get started now. They can't leave it.
Well, that's good.
Oh, yeah. It's happened each time. And I find that the first people that turn up are the ones who want to learn new skills because they're tech savvy and they've grown up with all of this. They're very interested in learning how to take control of their own finances for themselves. Now, because they are willing to learn to do new things and change their behaviour, they're much more open to trying something different. So when I'm teaching them things like budgeting skills, and then we move across into things like superannuation, they launch into it and munch their way through it because it's all new and exciting and different. And they know they're learning new skills and new knowledge. So they all get quite fired up because they see the possibility of how this could work for them down the track. Some of them have young children, so they're all geared up to teach their kids. Now, the second group that we have are women over the age of 40 because their life stage is very different.
So you've split these groups up, haven't you?
I tend to split them up because I find that the younger women are planning their future and growing their future and developing it. So they need those skills to make that happen for them. When women are in their 40s plus, generally have either bought and or sold a property, so they know the ins and outs of that. They understand superannuation because they've been contributing for some time. What they're looking to do is to take better control of their money behaviours, and if they have made or have had issues such as broken relationships, how to get on top of that and move themselves forward. And they have a more technical approach to superannuation tax because they've been doing both for some time. Also, women who are over the age of 40 are dealing with health issues that young women just have not got to yet. So when you're using the language for women, as I teach, in the 40s and 50s, that's a very different life experience language for them than it is when I'm teaching younger women who are aspiring to achieve. So their goals are very different. Their temperaments are different. So I do the Myers-Briggs as part of their survey, pre-test survey. And also, when they're older, they have money behaviours that may not have worked for them. Whereas when you're getting them young, they don't have time to develop that. That makes sense. So sometimes it's a correction in their 40s and 50s of what's working and what hasn't worked for them. And to change, because this whole course is behavioural change. We're trying to teach them skill and how to do things differently. When you're coming into people that have had 20 years of life experience, there's a lot more issues around changing behaviour than when you're young and you're starting out. Make sense?
I guess. I guess
the
question
of the women who are coming through in this course, they're women in their mid to late 30s mostly. Some are married with young kids. The second group that are coming through are also, a few of them are in the older age group. But it's interesting in Kalgoorlie itself, and you're asking about the demographics, high level of migrant population from all over the place in different countries and continents. And the women that are coming through have migrated here and they're getting established in the country. Some of them are still on particular visas. Some are studying, doing degrees. Some have finished their degrees like Queen and have got themselves established. So they're learning not just to negotiate their finances, they're learning to negotiate living in this country. and they've made a huge change, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically, to uproot themselves from one continent and country thousands of miles away on the other side of the world to come and live, of all places, in Kalgoorlie.
It's not such a cakewalk that the far right make it out to be. Bunch of bludgeoning migrants. That's far from the case, isn't it?
That's right. And so the beauty of this is that these are the women that the grant was aimed towards, and Queen turned them up. So we're thrilled because these women are starting out in every aspect of their life. Wonderful.
So I'm curious, you mentioned this difference between the under 40s and the over 40s. I am curious, before we go on, you and I understand what Myers-Briggs and Jung is all about. Can you just briefly explain to the audience that may not be aware?
Okay. The Myers-Briggs personality type indicator has been around for decades. And I've been trained in it for, I won't tell you how many decades either.
Coming from not that long. You're only 21, Philippa, so it's fine.
21 and a half, Ray.
Oh, my apologies. I undercut you a bit. Please continue.
However, what it does is it gives a personality type. And in my experience of teaching this program for a long time and creating it, based on female psychology, when I first started doing this as a research project, I was going to do a doctorate in it. I just didn't have the time. But the premise is that women spend, save and invest their money based on their personality type. And so what I've been researching is the language that I use. If you're, the way you manage data, there are 4 types. There's introverted, extroverted, thinking, intuition and sensing is the way you process data. The third preference is thinking or feeling, and the fourth preference is judging or perceiving, and you get 16 types out of that. So if you're an extroverted, intuitive feeler J, as I am, ENFJ, with a very strong thinking because I'm so educated.
That's what I am as well, an ENFJ.
Are you? Okay, an ENFJ. How about that?
So we're supposed to be educators, apparently.
Catalysts. That's our type is the catalyst who.
So in other words,
it creates people's growth and development.
So the matrix of 4x4 provides 16 personality types. They're not hard and fast, but they give you really good indicators, don't they?
They do. And here's the thing. The first 2 you're born with, the feeling and the thinking can adjust over your lifetime. So if you're a feeler, basically you get highly educated, you can access both easily. If you're a strong thinker, you'll probably end up having life crises to learn how to deal with your feelings. But the fourth preference is interesting, the judging and perceiving. And people with a J go, let's get this show on the road. What's the decision? Who's in charge around here? Can we get a schedule? Can we get it done? What time are we turning up? And they like to be organised. The perceivers, on the other hand, see possibilities. And the thing that they hate most, and this is where it runs into their money, they hate, loathe, detest budgeting. Because budgeting is a system, and the P's hate routine and system. So their biggest skill is to understand that all we do with a budget is set it up so it runs by itself. The other thing about P's, if you lock them into a system, they rebel. So if you don't have playtime money in their budget where they can suddenly decide to go off to a coffee with their girlfriends, going out to dinner tonight, or doing something spontaneous, they've got to be able to budget for that in case they make up their mind to do that at the last minute. So that's their temperament.
Just help me out a little bit. It's been a long time since I've done a Myers-Briggs. I remember it was probably, 80 or 100 questions. How many questions is it these days?
Well, at the back of the survey, this is in the public domain, it's a radio button, yes, no, survey. So when you're actually in the survey, you click on the link, it takes you through to it. You answer all the questions. In other words, it's what they call radio button in a survey.
Oh.
And so it's yes, no, neutral. It's either one or the other. So come out the other end of about 70 questions in this one.
That's right, yeah.
And it then hits calculate. It comes up with your type, ISTJ, ENFJ, INFP, whatever. You then write those 4 letters down, you click off the survey, click off the Myers-Briggs, you're still in the survey, you type in your letters, INFP, ENFJ, whatever, and you hit submit. And what that does, because I set up this with a statistician researcher, because that's also my background, and so I get the report immediately. What that tells me are the behaviours up to this point. This course is the catalyst to change behaviours that are not working, or to create new behaviours that they need to learn to budget, to manage their superannuation, understand investments, risk profiles, and how to set up investments, how to set up their wills and insurances, and be able to take care of their family. That's why this course is 6 weeks, and it's got all of these modules in it and all the training videos, and each week they have to download chapters of the original book and actually have to fill it out and work it out and do examples. So this is not something just playtime. This is actually skill teaching.
Okay.
And at the far end, I then have a catch-up call with them as a post-test to check in with what they've learned and what they're going to do with what they've learned, along with their goals that they've set up inside the course.
Okay, so Philippa, I'm going to cut you off right now because we're going to move into part 2 because we've got enough for a couple of shows. So thanks for being with us. We're going to cut over to part 2 next week. So Philippa, thanks for being on Dollars and Making Sense. And ladies and gents, we're going to pick this conversation up in next week.
Thank you.